English translation continuous paragraph form. A Japanese student named Richuki Kakuyama was hit by a truck and sent straight to another world, right at the moment he had just been accepted into his dream university. He was not reborn into a rich noble family but into a poor peasant household. It seemed as if the truck had a personal grudge against him. His family was also terrible, and because of his black Asian hair, he was bullied in this world for looking strange. Then, suddenly, a system notification appeared. He thought his life was finally going to change, but the system directly called him a nobody loser and shattered all his hopes. Now he had only one path left: work hard to pay off his family's debt. The boy had thought he would become a genius like Da Vinci or a powerful knight. But one day everything changed when he encountered a grizzly bear. Ian and his sister's lives were saved by a mage who killed the giant bear in a single strike. Ian was stunned. How could such a powerful mage be living in this tiny village? The woman told him she had received a prophecy to find a black-haired boy. Ian perfectly matched the description, so she took an interest in him. On the other side, Ian was still shocked that she had one-shot such a huge bear. He was told that anyone could become a mage, which sparked hope in Ian that he could use magic one day. The kind mage assured him that even as a peasant, he could change his fate and become a mage. She even offered to teach him magic, and Ian realized this opportunity could completely turn his miserable life around. The mage took him to her study room, where his first opponent was a thick book named Moronius, filled with the basics of magic. The mage properly obtained permission from his parents and the city lord so there would be no future problems. Everyone had high expectations for him, and Ian was ready to work with full effort. He began his training, and the system slowly tracked his progress. Moronius' completion reached 26%. Then, after reading many more heavy books and learning Harry Potter-like spell names, he reached 99%. Finally, Moronius was fully completed, and now Ian could perfectly understand and use magical language. 7 whole years passed in his training, and amazingly, his teacher still looked exactly the same as before. She said his private training was over and the next step would begin. At this point, Ian only had one skill: understanding and manipulating magical language. In the next scene, we see beautiful mountains and a calm sky. Beneath them, Ian was falling from the sky and getting badly beaten. He complained to his master that she was going too fast, but it was clear the teacher was enjoying it. Ian trembled in fear and said that in the last 6 years he had only learned one language. He was not a proper mage yet. His teacher told him to listen to the voices around him. But Ian thought this was crazy. What voices could there be at this height? At first he only heard the sound of the wind, but when he concentrated, he started hearing whispers, as if some entities were amazed watching him fly. Ian wondered if this was Moronius's voice. Then the system notified him that he had unlocked a new skill, air art, which let him control wind magic. The funny thing was that his first practical skill turned him into Superman. After training, his master teased him and laughed at his condition while Ian complained that she was having all the fun. His teacher explained that mages actually borrow mysterious powers from nature and communicate with them to use magic. This was how magic worked in this world, which completely shocked Ian. The voice from above told him it was actually the voice of the wind, and he would need to hear the voices of the other mysteries too. Ian now had a basic understanding of how magic worked and happily followed this method. Seeing him take it seriously, she gave him the next mission: understanding water arts. As you can guess, the protagonist was thrown into water to either become Michael Phelps or drown in the sea. He couldn't even talk to the rippling water and was barely keeping himself afloat. Then his teacher told him to learn frost arts and sent him straight to Antarctica, where his balls were freezing. At this point his teacher was quite hopeful and impressed by his learning speed. Meanwhile, our boy was questioning his own existence and barely managing everything. Without wasting time, this psycho mage beauty snapped her fingers and created the flames of hell in front of Ian. Our boy realized that after freezing him, she was now going to burn him. He begged his master for mercy, but as usual he heard the voice of the flames, which sparked curiosity in the young human. The first question from the flames was whether they could happily burn him. You can imagine his reaction. Bro was literally cooked. In the next scene we go into caves where Ian had to understand Earth Heart, the final task so far. Earth's voice was quite soothing and kept saying wise things. Our boy got confused and didn't understand what he heard, so he thought maybe he didn't have the ability to understand Earth Heart. Thinking it was a relief, he started heading out. Suddenly the system gave a notification that he received bonus skill points. These points could help increase his magic proficiency, and he currently had 100 points. This confirmed to Ian that he was cheating in this world because none of this could be free. Obviously Earth was currently his weak element, so he decided to upgrade it and tapped on the screen. As soon as he did, the screen flashed with bright blue light. Then Earth's voice warned him that there was lava below, and if he wasn't careful an earthquake could occur and lava could rise to the surface. Ian now understood what the voice was saying. His goal was simply to get out of here and tell his master that he had heard the voice of the mysteries. First, Ian commanded fire to burn so it could light the way. This time a different voice screamed in pain and expressed hatred for light. Ian tried to talk to it and asked if this was also Earth's voice, but this element was different. It wasn't the one his master had mentioned, because only the voice of darkness hates light, and this was the mystery. Ian was shocked. Outside, his master was checking her schedule and thinking she might have to attend a sorcerer conference. Suddenly her student came running out. She congratulated him on finally succeeding, and excitedly he told her he had made contact with the shadows of darkness. Hearing this, the mage beauty was completely shocked because she hadn't expected him to connect with darkness. This made her wonder if he had really contacted such a cowardly mystery. Her silence worried Ian. She told him they needed to descend the mountain. The boy got happy thinking about the next adventure, but it seemed Ian had misunderstood her words. His master meant something else. She clearly said that from now on they would officially go their separate ways. Pointing to her left, she told him to go to the Chrono League, where he would soon attend the Spacetime Sorcerer Conference. Because if it was in his fate to learn such arts, he might find a competent spacetime sorcerer there. Bro was completely confused because he was suddenly being told to learn a new concept like spacetime. Seeing his confusion, she was pleased. Elder thought this boy was born with the natural ability to seek out mysteries, and from her gut feeling she knew he could also use spacetime power. With that, their time together ended here. She excitedly told him to meet her in 3 years in Dranhai. In the next scene we arrive in the region she mentioned. This town looked a bit rural, but the people were quite busy. Ian was looking for the conference his master had told him about. He still thought about how unpredictable that woman was for sending him here. In the crowd, a man who looked like a travel guide was helping people go north. Ian remembered his master said the conference was in the north. Since he was free to travel, he thought it was best to leave now. In the next scene some people were setting up camp and Ian was sitting with them. One of the men who had called him earlier was the merchant guild master, Leek. Leek asked if this was the boy's first time going north, and Ian said he was just going there for some business. Hearing this, the old man said he probably had no idea about Dragon Mountain. Ian got confused because supposedly dangerous black dragons lived there. They were very beautiful but dangerous, and not easy to handle. Leek tried to act friendly and asked if he knew how to fight or run. Ian wasn't comfortable with this man but said he wasn't confident. Immediately the man called him useless and asked his profession. Embarrassed, Ian said he was a mage. Hearing this, Leek was shocked and called him Lord Mage. Hearing their conversation, a girl who was paying attention turned around. The girl in a cloak looked back to see what was happening. The others were also shocked that this boy was a mage. Ian himself didn't understand why everyone was reacting so strongly. Just by saying that, the atmosphere changed. As if respecting his abilities, Leek immediately started behaving like a subordinate and began serving him food. Ian refused, but the man still went to get him a new bowl. Slowly people started talking about him being a mage. Some doubted it and said his appearance made him look weak, as if he knew nothing. These haters kept underestimating him while Ian ignored them. Then the girl who was interested earlier approached him and quietly said that if he really was a mage, he should use some special spell to show everyone who the real boss was. This approach seemed a bit aggressive, but Ian didn't understand the point. The girl explained that mercenaries often think quiet people are weak, so it's necessary to show your power so people fear and respect you. If Ian did that, everyone would know he was top tier and the mercenaries would become his subordinates and protect him in times of trouble. This idea was new to Ian. He understood what the girl was saying, But he didn't know what he should do right now because bro had never had experience showing anger toward people before. While this conversation was happening, the man serving food secretly spat in Ian's bowl and covered it with a leaf. Seeing this insult, our boy became filled with rage. He couldn't believe this man had the audacity to spit in his food. Suddenly the ground started shaking, and the server realized he had made a big mistake. Ian walked up to him with a strong presence and asked how he dared to spit in his plate. Trembling in fear, the server started apologizing to Lord Mage, which made Ian even angrier. He said he did it to polish the plate. Ian got even more furious, asking if according to this man the best way to clean a plate was to spit in it. The man argued that water was actually dirty, so his spit was better. Ian didn't understand his logic and questioned it. The man explained that water had dirt and parasites, so he didn't wash plates with water. This was the worst reasoning because he genuinely believed his spit was cleaner. Hearing this, Ian was shaken to the core and spent the whole night disturbed by the thought. He literally froze in shock because in this medieval world there was no such thing as hygiene. Frustrated, Ian calmly chanted a spell and made the campfire flames surge high. The fire rose so high it towered over the people around, scaring everyone, including the girl who gave him the idea. In a strong tone, Ian ordered them to bring water immediately and scolded them as dirty medieval bastards. The two men ran away in fear to fetch water. They didn't even understand what mistake they had made. In the next scene the night became quiet. Everyone was asleep. But the mercenaries were looking for a girl named Kathy. A dirty man wanted her for himself because his thoughts were turning bad at 3 a.m. He spotted Kathy in the distance and called her, but he saw she was unconscious and some bandits had already taken her. The mercenaries shouted at them, but their macho act failed when one man was killed by an arrow. The rest of the mercenaries charged in anger. Their leader treated them like little insects. Then Kathy regained consciousness and started slashing the back of the man who grabbed her. The man threw her down because he couldn't take the risk. Kathy tried to run away. The leader ordered his men to catch her. Meanwhile, our boy was sleeping in his tent, still thinking about those disgusting memories of people cleaning with spit. Suddenly the noise outside woke him up. A mysterious voice told him to get up. He sensed the aura around and heard the mercenaries' voices running toward him. Leek arrived first and told Lord Mage they were in big trouble. In the next scene Ian reached the fight area where mercenaries were fighting bandits. Their leader was the strongest and easily cutting them down. He ordered his men to kill everyone without mercy and find the missing girl. Kathy was hiding behind a nearby tree, trembling in fear. Then a man found her and her worst fear came true. He put a sword to her and threatened that if she didn't stand up immediately, he would cut off her hand. Terrified, Kathy shrank in fear. She knew her life was about to end. She couldn't even stand when this ruthless man raised his sword to kill her. But at that moment something hit him so hard that the ground cracked from the impact. Kathy couldn't speak while her savior stood behind her. Ian had cast his spell and arrived just in time. She looked at him in amazement while he grabbed her hand and said to stay close to him. His confidence gave her comfort, and the others also formed a group behind Lord Mage. It looked funny, but it was actually methodical because Ian had a spell. He chanted something like Sukuna's furnace technique, but instead of fire, this man gathered the power of darkness and lightning into a sphere. The surrounding mercenaries and bandits noticed this spell. In just a few moments the entire area was plunged into pitch-black darkness. Nothing was visible. They lit their torches in fear, but besides that small light, nothing could be seen. People started bumping into each other in the dark like the power went out. But while they were struggling, Ian's transformation helped his group. He advanced with confidence while the others followed behind him. Using this technique, he thought they could easily escape. The current skill he was using was one of the shadow arts, which combined with his dark vision attribute allowed him to see in the darkness. But due to bad confidence, a problem occurred when one of the attackers bumped into Leek. This was bad because the man immediately raised his sword to cut them. Leek, standing in front, trembled in fear and begged for his life. He was a helpless old man, so Ian had to use fire burn incantation immediately. Remember when he used it earlier just to light a torch? This time he used that same torch to burn the man's face. He burned him alive. The man fell to the ground burning, and the other bandits got scared, The person they were facing was no joke. Ian also understood that showing this much power should be enough to scare the rest away. As he thought, panic suddenly spread. The bandits started running in all directions, but their leader didn't let them go and shouted for them to advance. Despite Bro's confidence, things didn't change because suddenly a black drake appeared and cut off their leader's head. It was a horrible death that filled the rest with fear of death. But that wasn't all. Our boy also got scared because the arrival of this flesh-eating monster had made the situation even more complicated. This curious beast watched the other humans like toys while eating one of its own prey. It was like a predator that had found an entire group to eat. The rest of the bandits ran away in fear. But fear also spread in Ian's group. Leek stuttered and drew the mage's attention to the drake. Ian might be a capable mage, but he had no experience fighting such a powerful creature. Ian himself realized they were heading toward complete destruction. Then the system told him they were facing a primordial mystery. This automatically gave him a new skill called summoning, which allowed him to call and talk to other life forms. This ability seemed useful against this monster. But it put our boy in thought, was this beast also like the other mysteries he had met before? They were all different elements, but if he could communicate with this creature, maybe they could be saved. Despite his hesitation, Ian took the risk and called out to the drake, who stared at him with blood dripping from its mouth. Leek and the others really thought they were going straight to hell. Even with Ian's protection, when the mage stared at the beast and the creature growled to intimidate him, Ian gathered a bit of confidence and continued communicating because so far no mystery had rejected his efforts. He introduced himself, but in the corniest way possible, saying he was the drake's friend. Yes, it seemed Bro had also learned talk no jutsu from Naruto during his 7-year time skip. The drake got confused, as did Ian's party. Ian was mentally showing a sign that friends don't fight each other, but he seemed to forget that this creature had just eaten someone. The beast growled again, making the others wonder what it was saying to the mage. Confidence showed on Ian's face, but the funny thing was he himself didn't understand what the creature was saying. He was just as confused as the others. He currently had no chance of proper communication. So he used all his remaining skill points and put everything into summoning stats to improve communication. After reading the summoning stats, Ian finally understood the drake's language and got the chance to talk to it. He called the drake again to confirm, but doing so made the beast angry and it yelled at him for wasting its time. Ian's party was trembling in fear while he tried to stay calm and continue talking. He first said he had no intention of fighting the monster, but the drake replied that even thinking of fighting it was foolish. Ian accepted it and said if they tried they would lose immediately. He played along with the drake's arrogance and showed that fighting it would be a waste of time. The proud drake thought these humans were begging for mercy. Leek and the others thought they were somehow communicating. Kathy was just waiting. The drake said killing weak people was pointless, which was what Ian wanted. He felt the negotiation was going in their favor, but there was one problem. The drake said its mood was very bad and it was not going to let them go. Ian's party fell to their knees begging for their lives while Ian wondered what to do. He thought the drake was telling him to leave and he had no options left except a direct approach. But instead of fighting, he became a therapist and asked why the drake was so angry. The beast angrily said it wasn't going to tell any human. Ian still said he wanted to help it. Hearing this, the creature found it arrogant because in its opinion humans couldn't do anything. In response, Ian spoke words in magical language and lifted water into the air, spreading it everywhere. This scene looked strange to the party and even stranger to the beast. Ian became surrounded by a mystical aura. Seeing this magic, the beast became interested. Ian said he was just a humble mage who wanted to talk to the mysteries of the world and he simply wanted to help the drake. When the beast stayed silent in anger, Ian understood he was on the right track. Now the real negotiation began. In the next scene it became night. The drake's bloodlust decreased and it became ready to talk. Ian was happy he had avoided death for himself and his friends. But the real problem now began, fulfilling its conditions. Ian understood his options, knowing the drake had all the leverage. This meant the mage had to make simple demands. Suddenly he remembered his master. She had said that magic mastery was impossible without communication mastery. That's why building relationships with mysteries was necessary. They were not friends. Every mystery had its own nature and temperament. Mage's job was to identify these natures and empathize with them, to walk with the hearts of the mysteries. In other words, Ian learned that social navigation was a critical skill. In this life-threatening situation, he had the chance to prove that he could swindle the Drake. To achieve this goal, he first opened the skill window. The system showed him a skill called Expert Summoning Management, which was perfect for the current problem. Normally, this seemed like the quickest choice, but he found it strange that it included feeding the Drake high-quality liquor. The more Ian read the system notes, the more nervous he got because the next step was to heavily praise the mystery. In short, the system's advice was, use alcohol and behave like Twitter simps. Ian gave up because for a loner this seemed impossible, and the Drake was also confused about what he was doing. Strengthening his resolve, Ian thought he needed to reach the creature's heart. He told the Drake he had prepared a mighty gift for it. The beast curiously told him to bring it immediately. Ian called Leek, who was startled by the command. He told him to bring the strongest liquor. A while later he brought a premium box and placed it in front of the Drake. The monster didn't understand its purpose and Ian was irritated inside, but on the outside he said this was a precious gift from the human world. He filled a large mug and gave it to the Drake. The Drake first sniffed it and found the smell strange. It angrily asked if this was some fishy trick. Ian's party got scared, but he calmly said there was nothing wrong. As proof, he drank the entire mug himself. The party was also shocked. Ian acted normal on the outside, but inside he was shaken by the strong taste. The Drake, bothered by the smell, closed its nose, but Ian convinced it to try. The monster took a small sip and suddenly started squirming like a little girl. It didn't like the taste but found it addictive. Ian seized the moment and told it to try more. All night the Drake drank so much it became completely drunk. Now it was happy and addicted to liquor. But Ian was amazed how it was still alive after drinking 7 full barrels. Slowly Ian and the Drake became besties, and both realized how heavy a drinker this beast was. At first our boy planned to escape when this big dangerous lizard fell asleep. But that plan wasn't going to work soon. Instead Ian himself ended up drinking the liquor. Suddenly the Drake called the Mage about his earlier request to find out why it was in a bad mood. Drunk Drake started crying and became emotional like a schoolgirl, which confused our boy. Apparently the Drake was annoyed that its nest was in a bad location, a harsher place than the others. Despite that, its partner had said it felt peace there and well the dragon was crying for its girlfriend. Meanwhile Ian wondered how this ugly-looking Drake managed to get a girlfriend when he himself had none. The creature, immersed in its pain, said its partner was being teased by others. This made it feel guilty toward her, and in anger it broke up with its own girlfriend. This became hilarious when Mr. Tough Guy's crying woke Leek and the others from their sleep and then took their souls to put them back to sleep. Ian could understand this feeling. The Drake was feeling the loss of a lover just like a human would. At this moment a plan came to Ian's mind that could make things better. He called the beast and told it he could fix its bad nest with magic. The monster was moved by this support. In return Ian asked for a simple favor. The next morning, Ian came walking over while Leek was still lost in some useless romantic dream. Our boy tapped this timid clown on the head and got irritated that this old fart wouldn't wake up. Ian threatened that if he didn't get up now he would snap his finger. Bro looked at him with a JoJo-style gigachad expression. His glare scared Leek, who jumped up screaming, and the others also fell over with him. All this time Ian had been pulling them on a cart because after the dragons roared they all fainted there. Kathy thought maybe she had made a mistake coming with them. The others asked if the Drake had gone back to its nest. They hugged each other in fear that the monster might come out and kill them. Ian assured them that the dragon was in its nest and was waiting for his arrival. He had already made a deal with the creature to save his friends' lives. Hearing this, these clowns suddenly became his #1 fans. Ian thought maybe he should have just let them die. Earlier he had told the monster he would fix its nest in exchange for these people's lives. Hearing this, Leek and the others started chanting "Brilliant Archmage." Our boy didn't understand where all this was coming from because these people thought the mage had defeated the big bad dragon, scolded it, sent it back to its nest, and made it surrender in front of his girl. These losers became filled with joy and wanted to serve this man for life. Ian just got irritated and ordered them to be ready until he returned and not to leave without him. They agreed and said they were all one. After that Leek told them to check their mercenary count. Kathy noticed this and was observing her surroundings. Now the scene cuts to where the dragon took our boy to its nest. It was a rocky area. Ian showed a shocked expression, which made the dragon jump on him as if it were unsolvable. Our boy clarified that it was not unfixable. He was just sleepy and his stamina was very low. Ian wanted to finish the work quickly so there would be no problems later. His objective was to push the protruding rocks to create more space here. Focusing himself, he communicated with Earth, which answered him. Ian asked for a favor but Earth immediately refused, saying it was busy. Bro understood this thing was not happy with him at all. When the anxious dragon immediately wanted an update, the mage explained that Earth was not listening to him at all. So he would try again when its mood was better. He also understood that if he requested a second time, Earth might get even angrier. The dragon argued that if that was the case then nothing could be done. But instead of getting angry, the dragon actually thanked Ian for trying for a miserable creature like itself. Our boy also got emotional. Then the dragon asked his name. Ian introduced himself. The beast also told its name, Longtail. It wanted them to become friends, so our boy held its paw and a new bond was formed, confirming the summoning requirement for this beast. The system assured him that he could use this monster anytime, but he still felt bad that he couldn't do anything more for his friend. The beast called the human and said they should at least celebrate their friendship. For that, it was ready to give him as much gold as he wanted. It was crazy that it had so many jewels and was ready to give them all to one human. Ian inspected a jewel and thought that if only Earth had given him a chance, everything would have been different. Then, looking closely at the jewel, he suddenly got an idea. He asked Longtail if he could scribble something on the floor. The beast, confused, allowed him. In a short time Ian carved a beautiful magic circle in which water became its heart. This was the same method his master had taught him, using magic circles to convince mysteries. Longtail didn't understand what the mage was doing, but our boy assured him everything would be fine. This time he called Earth again and asked her to remove the rocks and smooth the walls. Interestingly, the jewel placed on the circle reacted with bright light and the walls really started moving. According to the mage's will, Longtail was blinded by that light. But when he looked at his nest again, it had become a divine masterpiece. Ian said this was his return gift for their friendship. The dragon became emotional and almost cried. Its lair now smelled amazing and looked magnificent. Longtail asked if this was the beauty of magic and held the human's hand. Now he wouldn't feel ashamed to show this new lair to his girlfriend and in the future their children would also feel safe. Ian hadn't asked for this extra information, but he was happy he helped. Then the reverse effect of his technique hit him. His body trembled. He got a severe headache and before he could understand anything, he fainted with a nosebleed. Meaning he had fried his brain using this technique and he didn't have Gojo Satoru's reverse cursed technique. The dragon panicked and supported its friend, who was breathing heavily. The beast didn't know what to do. Then Kathy came running, shouting for her friend. The dragon got confused while Kathy trembled in fear, thinking it would eat her. She stopped there while the dragon gave her a death glare, mistaking her for an enemy. Kathy calmly said she had come to talk and repeated the same signs our boy had done earlier to show she was a friend. After quite some difficulty the beast understood her. Both looked at Ian, who was still in very bad condition and breathing with difficulty. By nightfall our boy was brought out under the open sky. When he regained consciousness he instinctively tried to grab his phone as if he were still on Earth. But the funny thing was that instead of a phone he grabbed this girl's hand and asked in surprise how his phone had become so soft or turned into gum. That squishy soft sensation didn't make sense until Kathy herself asked if he had woken up because bro was doing something very suspicious. Ian panicked and jumped away from her lap in embarrassment, confused about what she was doing there. At first he thought he was dreaming, but Kathy explained she had been taking care of him when he fell and hit his head. His head was still ringing with a headache and Kathy advised him to rest. Ian slowly realized he had really collapsed and had forced some evolutions overnight without adapting himself. Kathy looked at him confused while he was thinking if she had heard everything. Bro became so embarrassed he hid his face. Then Longtail's question came, but the overgrown lizard had already left, so our boy thought maybe it had gone to its girl. He apologized to Kathy for troubling her and asked how she had come here despite the dragon's guard. Kathy said she had somehow communicated that they were friends. Bro found it hard to believe and thought if she had used Mage language. He was still sleepy and didn't have all the answers. Kathy said she had followed him herself, knowing the risk, because she had something to ask the Mage. First, Kathy felt guilty that the attack last night was her responsibility. Ian was surprised to hear this and she immediately apologized for putting everyone in danger. Our boy understood the situation had become very heavy very quickly, which made him realize why she had been so scared. Ian guessed she had some personal issue with the bandits. But Kathy got offended by this suggestion. Bro even said her face looked like a bandit's, but Kathy vulnerably revealed a big secret. Ian thought it would be some cheesy twist like she was a kingdom's princess. But in reality she told him her real name was Lachi of the Terran family and she was a noble. The bandits had been sent by her fiancé. Ian thought it would be a typical lover's quarrel. But Kathy got upset by his thinking and told him she wanted to escape her fiancé's control. But after last night's events she had lost confidence. She held his hand and begged him to help her escape. Ian was a bit overwhelmed and asked who exactly she was running from and if the situation was that bad. Lachi told him her family, the Terran, was a baronial house that governed the Fenlip region, but due to lack of knights they were always under threat of attack. Because of this, the danger of territorial war always remained, which could destroy their family. In a hurry, her marriage was arranged to a knight who was previously a mercenary captain so the situation could be controlled. That man had great influence over his mercenary team, which ended the threats, and at first everything seemed fine. He looked good as the son-in-law of the Terran family, but soon everything changed. Hungry for power, he went crazy and thought he could do anything. He started abducting random women and began treating Kathy very badly. The situation became so bad that her parents demanded to break the engagement, but things didn't go well for them either. With a heavy heart she told him that the man had poisoned her parents. Ian was shaken to hear this. Lachi said the scumbag thought he would lose his power. So he poisoned her family to show his strength. Our boy also agreed that the man was a huge bastard. Lachi said that man would always remain a commoner. That's why he forcibly wanted to obtain her family's name and rank. She had barely escaped with the help of one servant, refusing to marry that man. But she knew he would keep coming after her, as a helpless girl with no one to turn to. Her only wish was that Ian help her reach safety and escape him. The mage understood her situation very well. Our boy could feel how violent that man was, willing to go so far as to kidnap his own fiancée. This matter was quite complicated and although he didn't know much about the medieval system, he could still empathize with her. Lachi repeatedly requested him, pleading on behalf of her family and ready to give any reward. Still, a question came to Ian's mind. Why him? He could also reject her. Lachi immediately answered that she had no other option because nothing could be worse than that man. She was ready to give him everything in exchange for her freedom. She was even willing to make him part of the Terran family to turn him into a noble. For a farmer's son, this was an incredible opportunity to join nobility. Ian was still undecided about what he wanted. If he chose this path he would become a noble, but perhaps he wouldn't be able to live the mage life he wanted. Maybe that life could also be good for him. But on the other hand, it could also be a path of living as a noble with politics and power. Right now he stood at the crossroads of his destiny, where he had to decide whether to become a noble or remain a mage. But he was born in a fantasy world for some reason, so he thought he should push his magic to its limits. By helping Lachi he could also earn more money. Therefore he decided that he would now keep the kidnappers away and let the rest of the things take their natural course. He cleared his throat and told Kathy that she should probably ask for help from someone who uses a sword well because a mage is not a warrior and can't help much in danger. Still, he agreed to help her if she was ready to pay him. After that everything would depend on the situation. Kathy burst into tears of joy and became deeply grateful for his help. She hugged Ian and he sympathetically let her cry. Meanwhile the drake was casually sunbathing when Ian and Kathy came out of its cave. The drake was happy to see its friend and said he looked good. Ian told him they needed to go down the mountain because everyone was waiting for them. The drake said both of them should climb on his back and he would take them there himself. Ian climbed on without thinking, but Kathy was a bit nervous. The drake told her to climb, calling her the mage's girlfriend. But Kathy misunderstood and started trembling in shame. Ian immediately clarified that it wasn't like that. The Drake still wasn't convinced because he thought the two of them made a cute couple. Kathy remained confused, but Ian calmly told her to climb behind him. In that moment Ian looked like a hero to her, which finally made her trust him. She climbed onto the Drake and held Ian tightly. At the same time below, the merchants were arguing with Leek. They were pressuring Leek. Some merchants insisted they should pack their goods immediately and leave because they believed the dragon must have already killed Ian and staying here only increased the danger. But the merchants split into two groups and both sides kept arguing about different decisions. One side wanted to wait for the powerful mage, while the other side desperately wanted to head to a safe place. Leek thought quietly for a while. Then he opened his eyes and said he had promised Ian he would wait for him, and because of that promise, no matter what happened he would stay here. The merchant supporting his decision shouted happily that they were staying. But just 10 minutes later, a group of bandits suddenly attacked them. The bandits captured everyone and aggressively asked where the girl traveling with them was. Leek got confused and asked which girl they were talking about. Then a bandit said they were talking about a beautiful dark blue-haired girl and warned Leek that pretending to be ignorant wouldn't save him. Leek suddenly realized they were talking about Kathy, but when everyone turned around, they saw she hadn't been with them for quite a while. The bandits immediately assumed everyone was lying and started threatening to kill them all, while the terrified merchants screamed. Then suddenly Leek realized their protector and savior Ian had returned. Everyone quickly turned around and saw the Drake running toward them at high speed with Ian and Kathy on its back. A bandit panicked and asked if that was the girl they were supposed to catch. But by then panic had already spread because that creature was coming toward them very fast. As soon as they realized it wasn't a dragon but a Drake, they immediately abandoned everything and ran to save their lives. After the bandits left, Leek was very grateful that Kathy was safe. However, he was also angry because if Ian hadn't been there she would have been caught between the bandits and those chasing her. A merchant asked how those people even knew about Kathy. But this mystery had to be left for later because no one understood how the pursuers had started tracking them as soon as they arrived. No one could understand either how people who believed in the heavenly god church could be so cruel. Hearing the name of the church, Ian stopped because he hadn't heard it for a long time. He knew it was one of the major religions in this world and its rules forbade enslaving believers. Yet human traffickers and criminals had been ignoring these rules for years, selling and exploiting people. The biggest thing was that even after seeing the mage and Drake with their own eyes, the bandits were still not ready to stop chasing Lachi. Ian understood he was dealing with such desperate and stubborn people who could risk anything for money. This thought made him uneasy because at this rate they would definitely find Lachi. This possibility scared him because he knew he couldn't handle so many enemies at once. So he asked the Drake for a favor and the Drake immediately agreed without thinking. Ian told him to drive those people away and kill them if necessary. Hearing this, a mischievous glint appeared in the Drake's eyes because it was ready to do anything for its new friend. It immediately set off without wasting time. Ian knew killing people was wrong, but this was a medieval fantasy world where killing and being killed was an everyday thing. If he wanted to survive in this world, he had to adapt himself to it. Suddenly his head started spinning again because he had overused Moronius language once more. Kathy immediately ran to him and held him so he wouldn't fall and told him not to push himself so hard. Leek immediately noticed this scene and his eyes sparkled with mischief. When he started teasing them and asked if they were dating, both Ian and Kathy reacted with complete horror, which made Leek grin even more. Right after that they continued their journey again, and along the way Ian kept receiving notifications telling him that the Drake had eliminated another human. In the end he received a total of 11 different notifications. He admitted to himself that it was surprisingly convenient that magic automatically reported to him. However, he felt frustrated that he couldn't openly summon the Drake in front of everyone. Suddenly the Drake contacted him through telepathy and proudly announced that it had driven away every suspicious person it could find. Ian sincerely thanked him for protecting them, but the Drake simply replied that it had done what would make its friend happy. Then the Drake asked if Ian was really leaving because it didn't like saying goodbye. However, it accepted that this was farewell for now. Ian understood that the Drake couldn't leave the mountain range, and this realization made him sad because it meant they wouldn't see each other for a long time. The drake thanked him once again for everything. But before finishing its words, it suddenly mentioned the mystery of the phoenix. Naturally, Ian immediately became interested. Finally, they reached Riverville, and Ian kept thinking about the drake's words about the phoenix. Rumors claimed that somewhere in the northern mountains lived an ice phoenix, and Ian felt a strong desire to see it himself. According to legend, the phoenix was a creature that never truly disappeared even after death and had the ability to change into every attribute like fire, ice, wind, and even stone. It was known as a monster with extraordinary adaptability that could adapt itself to any environment. And Ian quietly thought whether it was possible to create such a creature somehow. As soon as they reached the gates, Leek and the merchants announced that they were going to meet the village lord and asked Ian and Kathy if they wanted to go with them. Ian immediately decided he wouldn't go because if Lachi wanted to escape safely, staying away from powerful nobles and high-ranking officials was the smartest option. So he said the two of them were going to rest at an inn and then continue their travels. Immediately the merchants started teasing Ian and Kathy again, and this time Kathy happily played along, claiming she was also exhausted. She clung to Ian in such a way that Leek once again thought they were a couple and almost blushed with excitement. After separating from the merchants, Kathy admitted that pretending to be with Ian made things much easier because annoying people didn't bother her. However, Ian was less enthusiastic about this arrangement. Then he asked why she behaved so politely with commoners when she herself was just a farmer's son. Kathy honestly replied that she now admired him and saw no reason to treat him poorly. Ian thought about her words for a while and realized that no matter what, he also wanted to remain approachable and kind. Meanwhile, Kathy quietly admired Ian's natural politeness and wanted to become like him. Ian then asked what her plan was going forward, and Kathy explained that she was going to find Countna. She told him that the Count was her uncle on her mother's side, and she believed that if she explained everything, he would definitely help her. Ian immediately asked if the two of them were close, and Kathy admitted they weren't exactly distant. Still, Ian felt suspicious and pointed out that she shouldn't blindly trust an uncle who wasn't very close to his own sister. Kathy immediately got offended and demanded how Ian could suspect her uncle, insisting that there was nothing in this world she wouldn't do for him. Ian finally gave in and decided that if she trusted him so much, perhaps she was right. As soon as he agreed, Kathy suddenly went back into teasing mode and jokingly said that if an impressive mage like Ian proposed to her, she would happily marry him and become his wife to go to the Count. Ian immediately rejected this idea and reminded her that their agreement would end once she safely reached the Count. Kathy pouted and called him cruel for rejecting a noblewoman who was ready to marry him. But Ian casually replied that there were many other women in the world besides her. Hearing this, Kathy immediately got irritated and angrily moved toward Ian. When they finally reached the inn, Ian gave the receptionist a bag of gold and paid for a room and bath. The amount was quite high for both. The receptionist casually asked if the girl would also take a bath, but as soon as Kathy heard this, she panicked and quickly said she didn't need it. Ian first thought maybe she didn't like bathing and felt she was already quite dirty. But a little later he understood the truth. In this medieval world, public baths were completely open and Kathy was clearly uncomfortable bathing in front of strangers. Understanding her hesitation, Ian told the receptionist that only he would use the bath. Kathy immediately breathed a sigh of relief. But unfortunately, during this whole conversation, 3 suspicious people sitting nearby were watching Kathy carefully. Ian immediately noticed their gazes and became protective. He quickly told Kathy to tighten her robe because people were looking at her very attentively, and he did the same so as not to attract more attention. But it was already too late because those strangers had already fixed their eyes on Kathy and had no intention of forgetting her face. On the other side, those people were thinking dirty thoughts about Kathy. They had never seen such a beautiful girl before, and to them she looked like an angel descended from heaven. What irritated them the most was that she was traveling with a skinny black-haired boy like Ian. In their minds, someone like him was not worthy of being near her. They exchanged mischievous glances and quickly decided that since Ian and Kathy weren't going to stay at the inn for long, they had to act immediately if they wanted her for themselves. Their intentions were dirty from the start, and they decided that today was their chance. Meanwhile, inside the castle, Riverville's lord was talking to Leek. During the conversation, Leek suddenly realized this was the perfect opportunity to gain the Lord's favor and stay safe in the castle. So he started praising the Lord excessively. He praised him so much that he visibly became happy and arrogant. When he felt the timing was right, Leek told him that during their journey they had met a mage. He excitedly told everything, how that mage had tamed a dragon and how he had saved all of them from a horrible fate. Leek also told him that the mage was currently staying at an inn in town. Hearing this, the Lord's expression completely changed because instead of excitement he felt fear. He thought how dangerous it would be if such an unpredictable mage got angry and released a dragon on his territory. Not only would his people suffer, but the situation was already dangerous because there was another troublesome force in Riverville. That force was the Holy Santiago Knights, a fanatical order completely dedicated to serving God. They fought like both monks and warriors, and instead of participating in ordinary wars, they roamed the entire land looking for demons and monsters. They proudly called themselves protectors of humanity. Yet privately the Lord considered them righteous zealots who brought chaos wherever they went. The thought of the Santiago Knights clashing with the dragon-taming mage scared him because he was sure that if a conflict occurred between them, his peaceful little town would be destroyed. To prevent this disaster at all costs, he immediately ordered his commanders to prepare rooms for Leek and then to summon the Santiago Knights immediately so that both sides could be kept separate before anything catastrophic happened. Meanwhile, Ian and Kathy were sitting together at the inn having breakfast. After finishing the meal, Ian announced he was going to take a bath and casually told Kathy to finish eating and go to the second floor. As soon as Kathy was left alone, a suspicious man saw the opportunity and quietly started following her. When she was walking alone inside the inn, he suddenly approached her and said that the black-haired boy had sent him to take her to the dogs immediately because there was an urgent matter there. He explained that Ian was currently in the bath and had told him to bring her quickly. Kathy, who was naturally kind and already anxious because of the previous danger, immediately trusted him. The thought instantly came to her mind that maybe the bandits had come back to kidnap her. So without asking any more questions, she quickly followed the stranger. But as soon as she saw Ian calmly talking, she immediately realized something was very wrong. Unfortunately, this realization came too late because someone suddenly put a cloak over her face. Ian immediately noticed this movement, and as soon as a man tried to attack him, he lost his footing and fell because of Ian's magic. At that moment, Ian understood that this situation was nothing like Lachi's fiance's schemes. This was something completely different, and the worst part was that Kathy was being kidnapped right before his eyes. Without hesitation, Ian used his light magic to create illusions around himself. He had many strange abilities and mysteries he could use, and light was the easiest for now. But at the same time, something unexpected happened. Shadows started moving toward him as if they were alive, as if calling him to play with them. When Ian opened his eyes again, he suddenly realized that darkness itself had become his new ally. He immediately gathered the shadows and released them on the kidnappers. Darkness flowed from his eyes while the shadows completely surrounded those men. However, before he could move forward, he noticed reinforcements were coming nearby, and he couldn't believe ordinary criminals could have such organized backup. When he angrily asked where they had taken Kathy, the scared man admitted he really didn't know. Suddenly Ian felt the cold edge of a sword on his back. A stern voice ordered him to step aside, while another man asked about the previous darkness and wanted to know if he was the one controlling it. At that moment Ian understood who had arrived because behind him stood the warriors of the Holy Santiago Knights. Ian confirmed without hesitation that he was the mage who had summoned darkness. However, while speaking, he couldn't stop thinking about that scary old man standing in front of him because the bloodlust emanating from him was overwhelming. The criminal immediately started begging the knight to save him and shamelessly lied that the mage had tried to kill him for no reason. Ian looked at him in disbelief, not understanding how the man could twist the truth so easily. The old knight narrowed his eyes and thought that if Ian really was a mage, then such murderous intent was completely believable. Hearing this, Ian immediately got irritated. But the old man kept talking and claimed that all mages were the same because they had dangerous bloodlust inside them and thought they could do anything without consequences. Ian felt deeply insulted by these words and anger started rising inside him. However, before he could reply, the old man spoke with such authority that Ian understood an important thing about this world. Here bad speech and overwhelming presence were often regarded as proof of strength and skill. Still, another knight stepped forward and said that no matter how great Ian's abilities were, it didn't give him the right to use wicked magic. Ian stopped upon hearing this while the knight explained that surrounding oneself with darkness, turning away from heaven, and rejecting the sun's light was the same. According to him, hiding in darkness was only the behavior of a coward. Ian thought for a few moments, then cleared his throat and calmly replied that heaven's laws let both day and night exist together. He asked them, if heaven is only for light, then why does night exist? Hearing this, the knights fell into complete confusion. Their faces changed and they tried to understand his words. Soon many of them became fascinated with him, because they realized this young mage was far more intelligent than they had expected. Taking advantage of this moment, Ian politely told them to let him go because his sister had just been kidnapped and he needed to save her. Immediately the knights understood that the criminal had deceived them from the start and everyone's eyes filled with anger toward that lying man. The old knight ordered a man named Deech to guard him and himself headed toward Ian. As an apology for wasting Ian's time, he said he would personally help save his sister. Soon they reached the docks where the other kidnappers were trying to smuggle Kathy away by boat. They had tied her tightly in a body bag and were in a hurry to escape. The knights got angry seeing this because the criminals were about to get away. Meanwhile, Ian noticed the timing. Sunset was happening and now his magic could be more effective. The old knight asked what they should do and said everyone needed to work together to save the girl. The knights got excited for battle, but Ian warned them that attacking the boat directly could be dangerous. The old man refused to back down and said he would do anything to save her. Ian told him he had seen a large hook nearby and he was planning to somehow pull the boat back to shore. The old knight got confused and asked if he would do this with shadow magic because he didn't understand how it was possible. Ian casually said he had basic knowledge of many types of magic and could use more than one form. Hearing this, the old knight got even more confused because he had always seen people master only one element. Without wasting time, Ian started chanting in his infamous Moronius language and called the river to create obstacles and pulled the boat back. Immediately the river obeyed him. Strong currents started pulling the boat backward. Waves crashed and shook it, and the whole scene turned into chaos. Taking advantage of this moment, Ian safely rescued Kathy. As soon as she was freed, she hugged him tightly in relief. Ian immediately realized that if Kathy kept showing affection like this, the old knight would soon understand they weren't siblings at all. So he awkwardly hugged her back while thinking inside that he was already so exhausted. His energy was dangerously low and now he just wanted to go back to the inn and take a peaceful bath. Unfortunately, Ian had no idea yet that taking a simple peaceful bath in this world was almost impossible for him. Meanwhile, in the castle a sudden emergency letter arrived. It turned out that Riverville's eldest son Bernard and Riverville's knight Hassan were already heading quickly toward Ian's location. Bernard and Hassan both noticed the rising smoke in the distance and immediately assumed it was coming from some battle. They started worrying that perhaps the Lord's fears were coming true and a full-scale conflict between the knights and the mage had begun. Hassan secretly thought this situation was already quite troublesome because he had been dragging this sheltered young master along the whole time. Seeing the expression on Bernard's face, he became even more convinced that bringing him here was a terrible idea. He was tired of babysitting a spoiled child. But when they finally reached the source of the smoke, they found there was no battle. Instead, the knights were actually helping Ian while he was taking a bath in the open, which made Ian himself extremely uncomfortable and nervous. Bernard and Hassan immediately rushed into the scene and Hassan quickly told the young master to stop. As soon as they realized there was no danger and this was really just a bath, both were completely dumbfounded. They couldn't understand how someone could casually bathe in the open. Still, Bernard remained suspicious and convinced himself that there must be something deeper behind this. He started looking around intensely as if searching for some hidden meaning. Suddenly he shouted loudly that as the son of Riverville's lord he demanded a complete explanation for everything and ordered someone to brief him in full detail. He immediately threw a childish tantrum. Meanwhile, Ian watched the whole scene with increasing discomfort. The old knight, whose name was Elder, calmly said he would explain the situation, but Bernard arrogantly cut him off and said he hadn't asked Elder anything. He wanted Ian himself to answer. His disrespect toward Elder was clear. Bernard then proudly introduced himself as the family heir and rudely ordered Ian to come out and show him proper respect. Ian immediately realized this behavior was exactly what Kathy had told him about. In this world, nobles followed a strange tradition called mage betting. It was a custom where nobles deliberately provoked mages to test their power and temperament. If a mage silently tolerated the insults, people considered him weak. But if the mage reacted fiercely, he was considered truly powerful. Understanding that Bernard was intentionally provoking him, Ian refused to comply with his demands. Bernard immediately exploded in rage and shouted how someone like Ian could defy a noble. Ian calmly replied that he had no obligation to listen to a spoiled little boy. Furious, Bernard ordered his knight to capture the mage immediately. However, the knight himself seemed less interested in doing it. At that point, Ian decided enough was enough. He accepted that he could tolerate the earlier childish provocation, but treating him like a fraud had completely crossed the line. Standing up, he unleashed both his dark magic and light magic at the same time. Trash bins, axes, and nearby objects started ominously floating in the air. Hassan quickly tried to calm the situation. He apologized for the young master's disrespect and assured Ian that they fully understood his strength. Now Ian relaxed a bit because he thought this display would be enough to make Bernard back off, but he was proven completely wrong because the child immediately threw another tantrum. This time Ian really started to fear that this spoiled noble might try to execute him, so he had no option but to cooperate for now. The next day Ian went to the castle where Riverville's lord himself shared tea with him and apologized for his son's behavior. Ian politely replied that the apology should be from him because perhaps he had also overreacted. The lord then asked if Ian had come with his companion, but Ian told him she was busy with some work and was currently at the inn. In reality, he knew Kathy was under the knight's protection for her safety. The conversation quickly turned to Ian's background and the lord asked for his master's name. Ian replied that his master's name was Lord, and Riverville's lord immediately recognized that name. He told him she was one of the rising stars of the academy. Curious, he asked if Ian's master had ever talked about the south where the Magic Academy was located. Then the talk turned to politics, and the lord asked if Ian was planning to go to the Principality of Pauger or the Principality of Roxland. Ian admitted he didn't know much about those places. The lord explained that tensions between these two territories had recently become very dangerous. Apparently Pauger was now eyeing Roxland, and Ian immediately understood that this meant war could start soon. The lord then asked if Ian himself was going south, but Ian told him he was heading east because he was searching for a special mystery. Hearing this, the lord decided to give him a gift. Ian got confused when a chest was placed in front of him. The lord told him to open it, and inside he found a staff. The lord told him this staff had belonged to a famous aeromancer and its name was Wings Gate. Ian picked it up and immediately felt it was perfectly suited for him. From the outside it looked like a normal staff, but holding it felt like he had obtained the right prop for a real mage. Still, he appreciated this gesture from the bottom of his heart. The lord said it should be understood as gratitude for forgiving his son's behavior. Ian sincerely thanked him and happily accepted the gift. But as soon as he returned from the meeting, he suddenly heard someone loudly calling his name. Ian immediately became alert. Kathy came running toward him in panic and said something bad had happened. Then she showed him a raven she had caught. Seeing it was just a crow, Ian calmed down and Kathy breathed a sigh of relief. The old man explained that a hunter had caught the bird in the morning and was going to cook and eat it, but Kathy had stopped him and brought the crow. Ian understood Kathy was completely serious when she said the bird reminded her of Ian because both had black hair and she felt fate had sent it to them, so she couldn't let it die. Kathy was shining with excitement while Ian apologized to the old man and casually said they should just eat it. Hearing this, Kathy's heart broke and she couldn't believe he could be so cold. While Ian tried to calm her down, the knights were already happy thinking about this easy lunch. Then suddenly Ian heard a voice begging him to save it. He immediately told the others to wait a moment. Then he carefully picked up the raven and understood the creature was desperately asking for help. Ian started talking to it and soon noticed that although the bird couldn't understand his words, he could perfectly understand the raven. He realized Moronius' language wasn't working properly here, probably because the creature didn't have enough mystery for the magic to fully connect. He tried to concentrate more, but the raven kept panicking and repeating the same thing. Until finally Ian got irritated and angrily told it to shut up because he was already going to save it and didn't need to hear the same desperate plea 100 times. The raven immediately became quiet, and Ian thought that even if the crow didn't understand his language properly, it could understand mood and when to stay quiet. The knights stared at him in disbelief because the mage was talking to a crow as if it were a person. Ian explained that the raven was asking him for help, and Kathy became very happy because now her beloved crow would be saved. She shone with joy and said she had known from the start that this bird was special. Elder commented that the young lady also had the ability to sense mysteries, just like Ian, and Kathy became even happier hearing herself compared to him. Ian then carefully healed the crow's broken wing, and Kathy happily said the injury would recover soon. After that, she asked what they should do with the bird because if they gave it back to the hunters it would be eaten and there would be no point in saving it. Ian quietly looked into the crow's eyes for a while, and the raven again begged him not to leave it because the humans here were scary. Even though Ian found this creature extremely annoying, he still agreed and let it sit on his shoulder. Kathy immediately asked if they were really taking it with them, and Ian replied yes, at least until its wing fully healed. Kathy shone with excitement and insisted it needed a proper name. She gave many suggestions, but Ian didn't like any of them, so in the end he named it Oberon. Kathy immediately liked the name, and from that moment the crow's name became Oberon. The bird proudly declared that now they could live in the honor of serving him, and Ian immediately thought the crow was already becoming way too cheeky. Kathy then suggested that perhaps they should travel with the knights because she had realized that just the two of them wandering alone was unsafe. Ian thought about her words and realized she was right because ordinary bandits would never attack a group protected by the Knights of Santiago. Still, he wondered if it would benefit them if the knights weren't heading toward their destination. Before he could think further, Elder came to them and asked why the two of them looked so worried. He sat down with them and explained that no matter how talented a mage Ian was, traveling alone with a woman was very dangerous. That's why he proposed a deal involving a dangerous monster that had recently appeared in Count Katrina's territory. Elder told him that on the way there the knights were going to hunt a creature called Manticore, a brutal magical beast infamous for killing humans just for fun. Surprisingly, Ian already recognized this name and asked if Elder really wanted his help against something so dangerous. Elder immediately explained that they didn't want to force him and wouldn't put him in danger against his will. However, if Ian himself wanted to help them, no one would stop him. Ian immediately refused because he didn't want to risk his life against such a horrifying monster. However, Elder immediately stopped him and clarified that they needed him for another reason. He explained that when the order announced the hunt for the Manticore, a priest in Countess territory had forcibly forced a local mage to cooperate with them. Naturally, the mage was deeply offended by this behavior, and now the knights wanted Ian to smooth the situation because Ian was also a mage. Elder believed his words would carry much more weight than a knight's. Ian thought carefully about this proposal and realized it wasn't a bad deal. If he only had to deal with one irritated mage, in return they would get the protection and escort of the entire knightly order, which could be very useful for both him and Kathy. In the end he accepted the offer. After that they continued the journey together, and Ian quickly understood that traveling with the Knights of Santiago was surprisingly comfortable. The order's members were disciplined and held strong principles, and compared to his usual chaotic life this journey became almost stress-free. Still, if he had any complaint it was that almost every night someone or other tried to convert him and Kathy to their religion. At the beginning the conversations seemed tolerable, but soon this endless preaching became repetitive, exhausting, and irritating because Ian had no interest in abandoning his beliefs just because someone else insisted.